Peck on my wood, call a woody woodpecker. So J Hus is a UK rapper who broke onto the scene in 2017 with his album Common Sense. I thought it was pretty good. I don't really go back to it that much these days, but I liked the dancehall inclusions, the reggae fusions, and just his general summery vibey style that I kind of dug and just thought it was very just free spirited and fun. Couldn't really get too mad at a lot of the tracks on there, and Clartin was a big banger, and I feel like he's improved upon that sound, particularly the sound on this new album here, Big Conspiracy, which I think is honestly better than I've seen some people give it credit for, but I can definitely see why there are issues that people have with it. I feel like before I even dig into the tracks, I may as well get this out of the way because this is the one thing that stands out particularly poorly throughout the album, and that is his lyrics. He really isn't very good at stringing bars together. Like, I don't really think there are many tracks on here that have a very consistent theme, and generally his one-liners stand out pretty poorly. Where he says he's got one like Nicki, one like Cardi, and then he says Riri and then Rari, as in like Ferrari. It's just such a poor set of rhymes. The Ronald Reagan one-liner, the entire song Cucumber, which is pretty gross, and I skip it every time. Like, I've literally listened to that song once, that was enough for me, and the album flows so much better without having to hit that hurdle in the middle of it, because it's just such a badly written song. But ignoring all of that, I just feel like there's so much to take away from this album in terms of the sound, because the production on this is enough to kind of sway a lot of those bad lyrics for me. I guess it's in a way like listening to someone like Thugger, where, I mean, Thugger makes it funny at least with a lot of his poor lines, but generally he is pretty bad at just like, writing lyrics. But generally his ear for production is really quite good, and it just makes me want to kind of try this album again later in the year with a different context, because I just feel like releasing this in January is kind of shooting himself in the foot a little bit. People aren't really currently in the mood for this type of stuff, even though I think like the track 1, 2 and 3, like that little 3-peat at the beginning, are just perfect summer jams. That lovely touch with the guitar line on the first track and the feature ICTGM includes some really good vocals. The feature does feel a bit short-stinted though, but then on the second track she comes through with the hook, and I think she perfectly captures the vibe on that track with her vocals there. And I think tracks like this really show J Hus has got so much like diversity in terms of production ideas. Because later on you've then got Burna Boy and Coffee, who at the moment are just bringing that African flair to a lot of British music right now, and not necessarily just British music either. They've been all over the place with a lot of their features. And Burna Boy, I think, is really just bringing that sound so nicely to hip hop and R&B music. I think it's just a nice flair to be added on, because J Hus with his really deep, almost dirty voice coming through matches the production really well, I think, most of the time, and he flows over these tracks really nicely too. Again, just the lyrics every now and then really do read pretty poorly. Triumph got that bouncy beat, and the two tracks that stand out in kind of an odd way though on the album, where it really feels like J Hus is putting a bit more effort into the lyrical theme, are Must Be, and then you've got the closing track, Deeper Than Rap. I like the tongue-in-cheekness of Must Be, and the instrumental on that track is so good, like the jazzy, soulful sample used. Like, again, the diversity this man's got over this album is really impressive. It flows really quite naturally the whole way through, but you've got so many different types of beats on here. But yeah, that tongue-in-cheekness that I was mentioning there is really quite impressively added in, because it's quite a serious topic of, guilty by association, which he does say quite a few times in the track. I guess I don't really need to explain it to you, but that idea of being just there in that moment, and because you're there or because you know someone, you're just automatically guilty according to the police, or according to the law and that kind of stuff, which is something to be said. I mean, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world that because you're in in a situation where you're involved with people that are doing something that is pretty terrible, then I feel like you have some kind of moral obligation to speak up. But at the same time, I do feel like if you're just caught up in something that you just had no idea about, and you're just guilty by association, then there's also that side of things too, which I think J Hus is speaking up on here. Deeper Than Rap has got that roots type instrumental. It really reminds me of the track The Fire from How I Got Over, and that soulful vocal sample coming through as well, so good, just laced into the beat. And lyrically, it definitely reminds me quite a bit of Dave's last album, particularly tracks like Black, where he's just reeling off a lot of his thoughts, and it's not quite as cohesive as what Dave was doing on that particular song though, which again is kind of holding J Hus back a little bit. The track sounds amazing, but I just don't know if J Hus has quite got it in him to piece all the lyrics together to sort of make a cohesive statement on the song, because it's not really quite as cohesive as I'd like it to be. But I still think it's an impressive track for him, and a nice closing track too. Just probably could have done more tracks like this. If you're gonna end your album like this, that didn't really sound like this from the start, is a bit out of place, but I think it's a strong end anyway. But then I think of the album overall, and I just like most of how it sounds. It's not perfect, it's not even quite great, but I think I can overlook a lot of the lyrical issues, because it just is a really strong album overall. I'm going to go 7 out of 10. Definitely going to go back to this later in the year, see if it holds up, and especially how it sounds during those summer months, because it is a bit of a weird time to release it, but maybe it was tactical in the sense that it can be listened to now, but then you're not going to forget about it later in the year, because you're going to want to hear tracks like this in the summer. So maybe it was a pretty clever marketing tool, but at the same time it could also fall into obscurity, and J Hus gets nothing out of this in terms of like a hit or anything. But still, I think for what it is, I think J Hus is delivering some really good tunes here. Thank you for watching my review. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of this album. Have a good day. Subscribe, and goodbye.